Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's been in the news a lot recently. The shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Yeah, it's a case that has really captured the public's attention.
It has.
Hmm.
And, as with all of these cases, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Absolutely. There are so many layers to this story, and it really kind of reads like a thriller. You know,
Yeah, it does.
a targeted attack, a suspect that just vanished, and then this nationwide manhunt.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So we're going to try and unpack all of that today.
Yeah.
Drawing from a variety of sources. We have news reports, police statements, court documents, and even some of Mangione's own writings.
Oh, wow.
So
Interesting.
yeah, so we're really going to try and piece together like what happened, the sequence of events, and also try and get into the head of the suspect.
Yeah, trying to figure out what his background was like and what might have led him to this point.
Exactly. So why don't we start with a timeline of the crime itself? So it all began in late November when Luigi Mangione arrived in New York City by bus. He checked into the HI New York City hostel using a fake ID. He was really keeping a low profile. But there was this one interesting piece of security footage that shows him like briefly pulling down his mask and smiling in the hostel lobby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's eerie to look at that image now, considering what happened just, a little while later.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of suggests that he was aware of the cameras
Right.
and that he was almost maybe trying to project a certain image.
Yeah, maybe.
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely adds another layer of mystery to this whole thing.
It does. And then a little over a week later, on December 4th, Mangione left the hostel before dawn, and he was captured on video near the New York Hilton Midtown, where United Health Group's investor conference was being held.
Okay.
And he even stopped at a nearby Starbucks,
Huh.
seemingly very calm and collected
Wow.
before, heading to the hotel.
It's almost like he was, going through his normal routine. Like it was just another day.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, it's just so chilling.
Yeah, and the fact that he arrived by bicycle, which he later abandoned, suggests some level of premeditation, too.
Oh, absolutely. It seems like he was scouting the area before Thompson arrived.
Right. And then at 6:44 a.m., the unthinkable happened.
Yeah.
Mangione shot Brian Thompson as Thompson was arriving at the hotel. He immediately fled the scene and went into Central Park, where he dumped a backpack that police later recovered. And luckily, his escape route was captured on various security cameras as he made his way to the George Washington Bridge bus terminal
Okay.
and ultimately out of the city.
So they were able to track his movements pretty closely.
Yes, thankfully.
Wow. It's amazing how much surveillance footage there is these days.
It is. It's crazy.
And how helpful it can be in these kinds of investigations.
Yes. Now, what makes this case especially intriguing is the suspect himself,
Right.
Luigi Mangione. His background is just not what you'd expect in a case like this.
Yeah, he doesn't fit the typical profile of a violent criminal, does he?
No, not at all. He was high school valedictorian, graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, and had what seemed to be a very successful career as a data engineer.
Huh.
Yeah.
A real contrast to the crime he's accused of.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as we dig deeper into his life, certain details emerge that kind of offer potential clues.
Okay, like what?
Okay, so for one, we know that his grandparents owned Lorien Health Systems, which is a healthcare company.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so could this connection have fostered some sort of resentment towards the industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's definitely something that investigators are looking into.
Right, it's possible.
Family ties can be complicated.
They can. And we also know that Mangione struggled with a back injury, possibly from his time like surfing and hiking in Hawaii.
Okay.
And he was very interested in books about back pain and even used an x-ray of a spine with surgical hardware as his social media background image.
Wow, that's a little bit strange.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder if he had some negative experiences with the healthcare system. Yeah.
It does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe related to his back injury?
Yeah. Or maybe something even deeper.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And then there's the whol connection to Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Oh, wow, that's a whole other level.
Yeah. Mangione gave Kaczynski's manifesto a 4-star rating on Goodreads.
Really?
Yeah. And the NYPD believes that he might have actually drawn some inspiration from Kaczynski's anti-technology and anti-establishment views.
That's a disturbing thought.
It
To
is.
think that someone could be influenced by those kinds of ideas.
Yeah, it's like trying to put together a puzzle with missing pieces,
Okay.
We have all these seemingly disparate aspects of his life.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to figure out how they connect to his alleged crime.
Exactly. It's like, what was the catalyst?
Right. And speaking of the crime, let's talk about the contents of the backpack that he discarded.
Okay, what was in it?
So, among other things, it contained ammunition with the words delay, deny, and depose written on them, which is a phrase that's often used to criticize insurance companies.
Wow, so that directly ties his actions to the healthcare system.
Yeah, it does.
That's a pretty strong indication of a potential motive.
It is. And it kind of links his actions to this broader critique of the healthcare system and corporate America in general.
It's like he was trying to send a message.
It seems that way. And then perhaps the most revealing piece of this whole puzzle is this handwritten document that was found on Mangione when he was apprehended in Pennsylvania.
Oh, right, his so-called manifesto.
Yes, exactly.
What does that tell us?
Well, it provides a glimpse into his mindset and some potential insights into his motivations.
Okay, let's hear it.
So in his manifesto, Mangione criticizes the U.S. healthcare system, specifically the high costs and the relatively low life expectancy.
Right, and that's a common criticism of the U.S. healthcare system.
It is. And he refers to corporations as mafiosa, who are exploiting the country for profit.
So he definitely saw corporations as the enemy.
Yes. And he even states that he believes he's the first to face it with such brutal honesty.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is. And his words are truly chilling, particularly his apology for the strife and trauma he's caused, while also saying that it had to be done.
It's like he believed he was justified in his actions.
Yeah, it seems like he felt like he was doing something necessary.
That's scary.
It is. And, this document, it really raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah. Like, was he truly inspired by the Unabomber's ideology, or was it a combination of factors that pushed him to this point?
Exactly. And did his family's involvement in healthcare, combined with his struggles with back pain, fuel his resentment?
Right. It's a complicated picture, and I think we're only just beginning to scratch the surface.
I agree.
There's so much more to unpack here.
Definitely. But before we move on to Mangione's capture and the legal proceedings that followed, why don't we take a moment to just reflect on what we've learned so far?
Okay.
What stands out to you the most about this case so far?
Well, for me, it's the contrast between Mangione's seemingly ordinary life and this shocking crime that he's accused of, It's a stark reminder that sometimes even the most seemingly well-adjusted individuals can harbor deep-seated anger and resentment.
Yes, and it's a difficult thing to comprehend.
It is. It really challenges our assumptions about who's capable of violence.
Absolutely.
It really makes you question, what could push someone to that point,
It does. And as the manhunt for Mangione intensified, it really became a race against time to find him before he could potentially hurt anyone else. The NYPD released photos and videos of him, including that one from the hostel lobby where he took his mask off.
Right. That was a really crucial piece of evidence.
It was. It was shared everywhere.
It was, and it wasn't long before someone actually recognized him. On December 9th, a customer at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, saw a man that looked just like him.
Oh, wow. So it was a tip from the public that led to his capture.
It was.
That's amazing.
It is. It really shows how important it is for people to be vigilant and to speak up if they see something suspicious.
Absolutely. You never know what kind of impact you might have. Right. So 2 police officers went to the McDonald's and found Mangione just sitting there at a table with a laptop and a backpack. He was trying to be inconspicuous, wearing a medical mask and a beanie.
Of course, trying to blend in.
Right.
But did the officers recognize him?
Oh, yeah. They recognized him immediately. They asked him to take off his mask and ask for ID, and they noticed he was, visibly nervous and shaking.
Oh, wow. So he must have known the jig was up.
Right. And he gave him a fake New Jersey ID, the same one he used at the hostel.
So he was still trying to hide his true identity.
Yeah. But when they confronted him, he admitted who he was.
Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Wow. And what did they find when they searched his backpack?
So they found a 3D printed pistol with a silencer ammunition and over $8,000 in cash.
Sounds like he was prepared to run.
It does. And of course, they also found the handwritten document, his manifesto.
Right, the one we were talking about earlier.
Yes. And the discovery of that manifesto obviously added another layer of complexity to the case.
Yeah, because it gave investigators some potential insights into his motivations, but it also fueled public debate about the issues he raised.
Right. And it's important to remember that Mangione is now facing very serious charges in both Pennsylvania and New York.
Okay, so what are the charges?
Well, in Pennsylvania, it's related to firearm possession.
Makes sense.
And in New York, he's being charged with murder weapons possession and possession of a forged instrument.
Wow, so he's potentially facing a very long time behind bars.
He is. And his attorney has said that he plans to plead not guilty to all charges.
Of course.
So the legal proceedings are likely to be lengthy and complex.
Yeah, this is definitely not going to be a quick resolution.
No. But now I want to shift our focus to the public's reaction to this case.
Okay.
Particularly the online response.
Right, because this case has really blown up on social media.
It has. And while there's obviously been a huge wave of shock and horror, there's also been this disturbing undercurrent of support for Mangione online.
You're kidding.
People are like leaving comments on his old social media posts.
Wow, so they're like going back through his history.
Yes, some are expressing support. Others are trying to analyze his past for clues about what led him to this.
That's so strange to me. Like, why would anyone support someone who committed such a violent act?
I know. It's a phenomenon that we've seen before, though, in other cases involving violence. Some people just, they're disillusioned with systems of power or fueled by their own grievances, and they see the perpetrator as some kind of vigilante striking out against injustice.
I guess I can understand that perspective to some extent, but it's still so dangerous to glorify someone who's committed a serious crime.
It is. It's misguided, and it can desensitize people to violence and even inspire copycat acts.
Right. It's like saying that violence is an acceptable solution to problems.
Exactly. And we need to be so careful about that. We need to approach this case with nuance and avoid simplistic explanations. Mangione's actions were his own, and we can't just attribute them to societal frustrations or online influences. It oversimplifies a complex situation.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that he's responsible for his own choices.
Right. And it's also important to remember the very real and devastating consequences of those choices. Brian Thompson, a husband, a father, a colleague, he's gone.
Right. And his family and loved ones are left to deal with the immense pain of his loss.
And this case really forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about the potential for violence within our society.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call.
It is. And it raises all these questions about how we address deep-seated anger and resentment and how we prevent individuals from reaching a breaking point where they believe that violence is justified.
Yeah, and it's a conversation that we need to be having, not just in the aftermath of tragedies like this, but also proactively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to create a culture where people feel safe expressing their frustrations and seeking help when they need it.
Right. And we need to be mindful of the messages that we're sending out there, especially online. We can talk about societal issues and frustrations, but we need to be careful not to glorify violence or make it seem like an acceptable solution.
Yeah, think about it. Mangione's manifesto, it basically painted him as some kind of hero.
Yeah.
Right? The first to face it with such brutal honesty.
Exactly. And that kind of rhetoric can be very dangerous, especially for people who are already feeling angry or isolated.
It's like giving them permission to act on those feelings.
Right, and that's what we need to avoid. We need to promote empathy, understanding, and open dialogue, both online and offline.
Yeah. And speaking of broader implications, this case has really sent shockwaves through corporate America.
Oh, yeah. A CEO being assassinated, it's like something out of a movie.
It is. And it's raised a lot of concerns about security and the possibility of copycat attacks.
Right. Companies are definitely rethinking their security protocols after this.
And then there's the whole issue of gun control.
Yeah, the fact that he used a 3D printed gun, it really highlights the challenges that law enforcement is facing these days.
It does. Those guns are so hard to trace.
Exactly. And it's going to be a real problem moving forward.
It is. And we can't forget about the impact this case has had on the healthcare industry.
Right. Mangione's manifesto, it really resonated with a lot of people who are struggling with the current system.
It did. And it's brought to light a lot of the anxieties that people have about healthcare costs and access.
Yeah, it's definitely sparked a conversation about the need for reform.
It has. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that this case is so multifaceted and complex.
Absolutely. There's no easy answers here.
No. We've explored the timeline, the suspect's motivations, the public reaction, and the broader implications for society.
And it's clear that there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
There is. And it's a story that's still unfolding.
Right. The legal proceedings are just beginning.
They are. And we're going to be following this case closely and keeping you updated on any major developments.
Sounds good.
But for now, I just want to thank you for joining us on this journey, and I encourage all of you to continue to seek out diverse perspectives, engage in meaningful conversations, and be a force for positive change in your communities.
Well said.
Thank you for being here with us today.
It was my pleasure. It was my